Welcome, dear friend, to Monk's Temple. Come, sit with me here in the quiet. You might be in a bustling city apartment, or in a quiet room as night falls, or perhaps pausing for breath in the middle of a demanding day. Wherever you are, let your awareness gently settle into this space between words. Feel the chair or floor beneath you, supporting you. Notice the air as it flows in, and flows out. There is nowhere you need to be right now, nothing you need to do. For this time, we are simply present together, exploring the landscape within. For 35 years, within these temple walls and beyond, I have sat with the human heart in all its seasons. I have seen the storms of sorrow and the clear skies of joy, and I have observed that our greatest suffering often springs not from life's inevitable pains, but from the habits of mind we cultivate around them. Like water wearing down stone, these subtle, repeated patterns can shape us into narrower versions of ourselves, draining our mental strength without us even realizing it. Today, we will gently illuminate 10 such habits. But this is not a lecture, and you are not here to be scolded. Imagine instead that we are walking together through a vast, old forest, the forest of your own consciousness. We will pause at certain clearings, certain familiar groves, and simply look with compassionate curiosity. The light we will use to see by comes from an ancient source, the profound and practical wisdom of the Buddhist teachings. This is not a philosophy of escape, but a map of liberation, showing us where we get stuck and how we might find a path to greater resilience, peace, and innate strength. We begin our walk not where you might expect. We do not start with negativity or blame, but in a clearing where many modern hearts feel a particular ache, the neglect of the quiet, nourishing streams of connection. Let us begin there. There is a story from the early days of my time at the temple, of an old bell that hung in a forgotten courtyard. It was cast from bronze, beautifully made, but over decades, vines had crept over it, and layers of dust and moss had settled into its intricate crevices. No one struck it anymore. It was silent. One rainy season, a particularly fierce storm loosened a tile from the roof above it. The tile fell, struck the bell with a clumsy clunk, and something remarkable happened. Under the grime, the bronze was still true. A deep, resonant, beautiful tone emerged, so pure it seemed to cleanse the very air. The monks heard it and came. We spent days carefully cleaning the bell, removing what did not belong, until it could ring freely again. Many of us treat our inner world like that bell. We let the vines of daily busyness creep over it. We allow the dust of to-do lists and the moss of others' expectations to settle into our sacred spaces. We go days, weeks, even years, without striking the bell of our own authentic voice. We stop expressing what is true for us, our tender feelings, our creative sparks, our quiet convictions, our playful ideas. We believe it is safer to be silent, that our sound is not needed, or that it might disturb the peace. But this habit, this self-silencing, is a profound source of mental weakness. It creates a division within. A part of you knows what is true, what is felt, what wants to be said or created, and another part smothers it. The energy required to maintain this internal silence is exhausting. It turns your vitality inward, where it stagnates, often fermenting into anxiety, resentment, or a dull, low-grade sadness. The Buddha's path places great importance on what is called samavaka, right speech. Often, we think this means just not lying or gossiping. But at its deepest level, right speech is about integrity of expression. It means your outer world, your words, your actions, your art, your posture, becomes a clear, clean channel for the truth of your inner world. It is communication that is rooted in honesty, spoken with kindness, offered at the right time, and aimed at creating harmony, not division. When we habitually do not express ourselves, we violate this principle not toward others, but toward ourselves. We are not being honest with our own heart. We are not being kind to our own need to be seen and heard. I remember a woman, a weaver, who visited the temple many summers ago. Her hands could create tapestries of breathtaking color, but she only wrote what she was commissioned to write. Her own sketches, filled with strange, wonderful creatures and abstract forms, she kept hidden in a drawer, calling them silly. She spoke little in groups, her voice a whisper, though her eyes held oceans of insight. She came feeling parched, disconnected from her own life. I did not tell her to speak more. Instead, I gave her a simple practice. Each dawn, before she touched her commissioned work, she was to sit with a single, blank card. On it, she was to make one mark, a line, a smudge of color, a word, that represented one true feeling from the night's dreams or the morning's first waking thought. Not to show anyone. Just to express it from the inside to the outside, onto the paper. For weeks it was just messy cards piling up. Then, one day, she looked at a week's worth and saw a pattern, a recurring swirl of blue and green. Without thinking, she began to weave it. It became a small, private hanging for her own room. It was the first thing she had made entirely for her own soul in 20 years. She did not sell it. She did not even show it to many. But the act of expressing that inner pattern, of giving it form outside of herself, changed the quality of her silence. It was no longer a prison of suppression, it became a fertile, peaceful quiet from which her true voice could occasionally ring, clear and resonant. Your expression is your bell. The practice is to gently, compassionately, clear away what stifles it. This doesn't mean you must shout your truths from the rooftops. It begins with small, authentic gestures. It is saying, I feel differently about that, when you might have nodded along. It is writing the poem in your journal that you think is bad. It is choosing the color you love for your walls, even if it's not trendy. It is allowing a tear to fall when you are moved, instead of blinking it back. Each time you do this, you clean a little more moss from the bronze. You affirm that your inner world is valid, is valuable, and deserves to exist in the outer world. The sound you make will be uniquely, beautifully yours. And a mind that can express itself authentically is a mind that is strong, integrated, and at peace. This is just the first clearing in our forest walk. If this gentle exploration resonates with you, if you feel a longing for more of this kind of reflective space in your life, I invite you to join our community here at Monk's Temple. By subscribing, you plant a seed of mindful remembrance in your daily routine. It is a way of choosing, again and again, to return to this place of depth and care. We would be so honored to have you walking this path with us. Now, let us move deeper into the forest. From the quiet of unexpressed truth, we often wander into a noisier, more tangled thicket, the habit of giving all our power away to the opinions and actions of others. Let us continue our walk. The forest path now leads us to a place where the trees grow very close together, and the light becomes dappled and uncertain. Here, the undergrowth is thick with the sound of other voices, whispers, judgments, applause, criticism, until it becomes hard to hear your own footsteps, your own breath. This is the territory of a habit that ties our sense of worth to a shifting, external world. Imagine you are a pond, clear and still. Your nature is to reflect the sky, the vast blue, the passing clouds, the brilliant sun, the dark, star-speckled night. Now, imagine you become obsessed with the reflections. You fret when a cloud passes, believing your water has grown dark and flawed. You preen when the sun is high, thinking the brilliance is your own. You grow anxious when the wind ripples the surface, distorting the image. You have forgotten you are the water, the receptive, deep, and inherently clear medium. You believe you are the reflection. This is the exhausting work of basing your value on external praise, criticism, and the ever-changing moods of those around you. This habit is a deep source of fragility. It makes your inner peace a hostage to circumstances you cannot control. A kind word lifts you to the heavens. A passing slight casts you into shadow. Your energy is constantly spent managing perceptions, editing yourself to fit in, performing for an audience that is often not even paying close attention. In the teachings that form the bedrock of Monk's Temple, there is a sublime concept known as upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is the cultivated ability of the water to remain water, regardless of what it reflects. It is the poise of the deep pond that knows a storm on its surface does not disturb its tranquil depths. It is not cold indifference. It is a profound, unshakable balance. It is the understanding that praise and blame, success and failure, gain and loss are all just different kinds of weather passing over your essential nature. They are not you. There was a young man, a talented potter, whose joy was completely hijacked by the market. If a customer praised a bowl, he was elated for days, shaping dozens more just like it. If someone criticized the glaze, he would smash the entire kiln load in a fit of despair, convinced he was a fraud. He was a leaf tossed in the wind of opinion. He came to the temple brittle and exhausted. I asked him to perform a simple, secret task. He was to make one small cup each day, in total secrecy. No one was to see it, not even me. When it was done, he was to hold it, feel its weight, its curves, and then, this was the hardest part, he was to say to it, and to himself, this exists. It is enough. Then, he was to place it on a hidden shelf. He was not to judge it as good or bad by any external standard. The only measure was its existence. For a month, he did this. The first cups were clumsy, and the words felt hollow. But slowly, as the shelf filled, something shifted. His relationship was no longer between him and a potential critic, but between him, the clay, and the act of creation. He began to feel a quiet, internal satisfaction that was entirely his own. The final cup was not his best, by technical standards, but it was the first he made with a complete, untroubled heart. He had touched, however briefly, the still water beneath the reflections. Your worth is not a verdict to be delivered by a committee of other humans, who are themselves lost in their own forests of worry and desire. It is your original, innate nature. The practice of disentangling from this habit is twofold. First, mindfulness. Notice when you are anxiously checking for approval or bracing for criticism. Simply note, I am seeking my reflection in someone else's eyes. Second, cultivate the direct experience of your own being. Sit quietly. Feel the aliveness in your hands. Feel the breath moving on its own. Listen to the silence underneath the thoughts. This is you, the aware, living presence. This cannot be rated or judged. It simply is. The more you rest in this direct knowing, the less power external opinions hold. You begin to live from the inside out, like a tree drawing nourishment from its own deep roots, rather than from the fleeting sunlight of others' approval. Our path now turns away from the noisy thicket of others' voices and leads us to a different kind of struggle. Here, the ground is hard, and we find ourselves carrying a burden that was never ours to bear. Let us look at the habit of taking responsibility for winds and weather we cannot command. A farmer once came to the temple in deep despair. A drought had scorched his fields. He had done everything right. He had prepared the soil with care, chosen the best seeds, planted at the perfect moon phase. Yet, no rain came. I have failed, he wept. My control was an illusion. I walked with him to the edge of his parched land and pointed to a single, defiant wildflower growing in a crack of a stone, far from any irrigation. Did you plant that? I asked. He shook his head. Did you water it? No, yet, I said, here it is, alive. You are an expert on seeds, soil, and timing. But you are not the master of rain. Your suffering is not from the drought, but from the boundary you have crossed in your mind. You believed your domain was the sky, when it is, and has always been, the earth. This habit, the compulsive need to control outcomes, people, and circumstances that are fundamentally beyond our jurisdiction, is a primary source of anxiety and fatigue. It is the mind's rebellion against the fundamental Buddhist truth of anicca, or impermanence, and the interconnected, chaotic flow of life. We set ourselves up as the general manager of the universe, and then are shocked and exhausted when the universe declines to follow our business plan. We try to force relationships to be a certain way, demand that our bodies never age or ache, insist that traffic flows smoothly, and that the world conform to our personal schedule for happiness. The gap between our demand for control and reality's glorious, messy independence is where we bleed energy. The wisdom here is in the graceful, powerful act of discernment. It is learning to know, in your bones, the difference between your sphere of influence and your sphere of concern. Your sphere of influence is small, sacred, and potent. Your next action, your attitude, your words, your breath, your effort. Your sphere of concern is vast. Global events, the past, other people's choices, the weather, the economy. Mental strength grows when you pour your precious energy into the first sphere and meet the second with acceptance, not control. Acceptance is not passive resignation. It is the clear-eyed, courageous acknowledgement of what is. From that place of truth, not from the frustrated fantasy of how things should be, intelligent and compassionate action becomes possible. I learned this not from a book, but from a maple tree outside the temple kitchen. Every autumn, I would painstakingly rake its beautiful crimson leaves into neat piles, wanting to maintain order. And every night, the wind would blow, scattering them again. I would grumble, raking once more. One year, I was too busy with temple duties to rake. The leaves fell, were scattered by wind, gathered in corners by rain, and slowly began to decompose. By spring, where the leaves had lain thickest, the soil was darkest, richest, and the wildflowers grew in a spectacular profusion I had never seen before. The tree and the wind knew a rhythm my rake could not understand. My control was not only futile, it was actively inhibiting a more beautiful process. Your practice is to identify the rake in your life. Where are you straining, forcing, and manipulating, trying to hold back the wind? It might be in a relationship, a work project, or your own emotional state. Pause. Ask yourself, what, in this situation, is truly within my domain? Can I control this person's feelings, or only my own response? Can I guarantee this outcome, or only commit to my best effort? Consciously release your grip on what lies outside your domain. Pour that reclaimed energy into what you can do, act with integrity, speak with kindness, prepare the soil diligently. This is the way of the wise farmer. He tends his plot with all his skill and heart, but he does not curse the sky. He adapts. He observes. He works with reality, not against it. In this surrender of false control, you find a truer, more resilient power. Let us go deeper. The forest path now winds downward, into a shaded hollow where the air is still and the ground is soft with layers of fallen leaves. Here, time feels different. The light has a golden, old quality. In this place, we often find ourselves sifting through those layers, searching for something we think we've lost. This is the realm of a habit that keeps us facing backwards, even as life moves forward. There is a room in an old part of the temple, rarely used. It is not a shrine, but a storage space. It holds old ceremonial robes worn thin, broken bells, scrolls with faded ink. It is a museum of how things used to be. It has a certain musty charm, but no one lives there. To dwell in the past is to take up residence in such a room. You pore over the artifacts of old hurts and faded glories, polishing them with regret or longing, while outside, the living temple of the present moment stands, vibrant and full of birdsong, waiting for your presence. This habit is a thief of vitality. It uses the fuel of now, your attention, your emotional energy, to keep the lights on in a museum that is closed to the public. Whether it is the repetitive replay of an old injustice, the nostalgic ache for a happier time, or the grinding guilt over a mistake, dwelling in the past paralyzes your ability to engage fully with the life that is actually happening. It is like trying to drive a car by staring intently into the rearview mirror. You will miss the road ahead, the scenery beside you, and likely veer into danger. The Buddhist teaching of anicca, impermanence, is the key that unlocks this room. Everything that has ever happened, every joy, every pain, every mundane Tuesday, was a temporary arrangement of conditions. It arose, it lingered, it passed away. To cling to it is to argue with a fundamental law of existence. It is to hold a cup and grieve because the tea you drank from it yesterday is gone, while ignoring the fresh, steaming cup being offered to you today. The practice is not to forget the past, but to relate to it wisely, as history, as teacher, as compost, not as home. A woman came to the temple once, carrying a small, ornate box. Inside was not a jewel, but a bundle of old letters, from a love that had ended painfully decades before. She read them every year on the anniversary of their parting, reopening the wound. "It is my penance," she said. "My reminder." I asked her to perform a ceremony with me. We went to the temple's fire pit, used for burning old prayer flags, sending prayers skyward on the smoke. I asked her to read one letter aloud, to give voice to the old pain one final time. Then, with great reverence, she placed it in the flames. We watched the paper curl and blacken, the words vanishing into ash and light. She did not burn them all that day. But she burned one. The physical act of transforming that artifact, of releasing it from preserved form back into energy, was a profound shift. She was no longer a curator of a museum of pain. She became an alchemist, turning leaden memory into the empty space where new life could grow. Your past is not a sentence, it is soil. Some events have left rich nutrients, others, rocks and debris. Your work is not to live in the soil, but to tend it. To gently turn it over, integrate the lessons, and then plant the seeds of your present intention. When you find yourself wandering the museum, acknowledge it with kindness. Ah, I am visiting the past again. Then, feel your feet on the ground right now. Listen for a present sound, a clock ticking, a bird, the hum of electricity. Breathe into your body as it is in this moment. You are not the person in that memory anymore. You are the aware space in which the memory is arising. Come back to the living temple of the present. It is the only place where life actually happens, and the only place where you can ever find peace. From the shaded hollow of memory, our path now climbs toward a sunlit ridge. But here, a different challenge awaits. The view is so expansive, so filled with possibility, that we can become lost not in what was, but in seductive stories of what might be. Let us examine this. High on this ridge, the air is thin and clear. You can see for miles. It is easy to look at a distant, beautiful peak and begin, in your mind, to construct a perfect cabin on its slope. You plan the wooden porch, the cozy fireplace, the view from the window. You imagine the peace, the accomplishment. But you have not packed a bag. You have not looked at a map of the treacherous valley between here and there. You have not strengthened your legs for the climb. This is the habit of fantasizing, of indulging in elaborate, detailed daydreams about a future that is disconnected from the gritty, step-by-step reality of the present. Fantasizing weakens the mind because it is a form of mental escapism that devalues your current life. It breeds dissatisfaction with the raw materials you actually have, this body, this day, these resources, because they can never match the airbrushed perfection of the fantasy. It also sets you up for crushing disappointment when reality, which is always a mix of effort and grace, struggle and ease, fails to deliver the fantasy exactly as pictured. The Buddhist path guides us with the principle of right intention and right effort. Right intention asks, from what place does this dream arise? Is it from genuine compassion, creativity, and love? Or from greed, aversion, and a desire to escape? Right effort is the energy to build the trail, not just admire the peak. It is the commitment to the next, real, often unglamorous step. There was a young monk, years ago, who was obsessed with the idea of attaining profound, earth-shattering enlightenment. He fantasized about the moment of awakening constantly, the light, the bliss, the wisdom that would flow from him. He read all the advanced texts but neglected his daily chores of sweeping and cooking. He became irritable with the mundane practices. The senior cook saw this. One day, he assigned the young monk to the task of polishing every single rice bowl in the kitchen. Over 100 of them, until he could see his own reflection clearly in the concave surface. It was tedious, precise work. For days, the monk scrubbed and polished, his back aching, his mind initially raging against the boredom. But slowly, as he focused on the curve of each bowl, the feel of the cloth, the transformation from dull to gleaming, his mind settled. In the clear reflection of the final bowl, he did not see a radiant sage. He saw a tired, humble, but utterly present young man. And in that utter presence, he experienced a moment of perfect peace, not as he had fantasized, but as it actually was, simple, grounded, and immediate. His fantasy was a castle on a cloud. His reality was a clean bowl, and it was enough. To cultivate mental strength, we must practice grounded visualization. This is the bridge between dream and reality. It involves imagining not just the perfect outcome, but the process. Visualize yourself studying for the exam, feeling the frustration, taking breaks, persevering. See yourself having the difficult conversation, feeling nervous, choosing kind words. Envision the garden, but also feel the soil under your nails, see the weeds you'll pull, anticipate the patience required. This kind of visualization respects the present moment as the foundation of all futures. It builds resilience because it includes the struggles as part of the beautiful, real journey. Let your dreams be lighthouses, not hiding places. Chart your course by their light, but build your boat, here and now, with the wood you actually have. Let us walk on. The path now leads us beside a swift, rocky stream. The water churns and bubbles, throwing itself against the stones with great noise and fury. It is powerful, but it goes nowhere quickly. It is trapped in a cycle of its own agitated reaction. This stream mirrors a habit within us. When our emotional energy, instead of flowing through us, becomes a torrent that sweeps us away. We often speak of having emotions. But this habit is one of being had by them. Anger arises, and we become rage itself. Fear whispers, and we become paralyzing dread. Sadness visits, and we construct a home for it, moving in as a permanent resident. We conflate the temporary, passing weather of feeling with the very climate of our being. In doing so, we hand over the reins of our mind, our speech, and our actions to forces that are, by nature, fleeting and impersonal. This is profoundly weakening. It makes us reactive, volatile, and often leaves a trail of damage, to ourselves and others, that we later regret. The wisdom offered from the Buddha's insights does not ask us to suppress the stream. It invites us to discover that we are not the water, but the banks of the stream. The banks contain the water, give it direction, and remain steady through floods and droughts. This is the practice of mindfulness, or sati. Mindfulness is the capacity to feel the full force of the emotional current without leaping into it. You feel the heat of anger in your chest, the tightness of anxiety in your throat, the heavy pull of grief in your belly, and you simply acknowledge, this sensation is here. This feeling is present. In that simple, non-judgmental acknowledgement, a space opens up. In that space, you are not the anger, you are the awareness that knows anger is present. This is a revolutionary shift. From within this space, you can choose a response, rather than being compelled into a reaction. I recall a tradesman, a blacksmith, who would fly into towering rages when a piece of metal wouldn't bend to his will. He would ruin his work, damage his tools, and terrify his apprentices. He described it as a red wave that drowned him. I asked him if, the next time he felt the heat of the forge on his face, he could also feel the heat rising in his own body before he picked up the hammer. Could he just pause, for 3 breaths, and feel the physical fury, the clenched jaw, the pounding heart, as pure sensation? He agreed to try. The first time, he managed 1 breath before the wave took him. But he had noticed the pause. Over weeks, the pause grew. One day, he felt the wave rise, took his 3 breaths, and in that space, he had a clear thought, this iron is stubborn. It needs a different heat. The rage dissipated like steam. He had, for the first time, contained the stream. He was the bank, not the flood. His emotional life began to change from a series of destructive explosions to a source of powerful, usable energy. Alongside mindfulness, the heart practice of metta, or loving kindness, is essential. When you are caught in self-critical anger or isolating sadness, metta is like sending a gentle, warm light from the steady bank into the turbulent water. You offer kindness to the very part of you that is suffering. May this anger be held with care. May this fear be met with peace. This does not justify the emotion's cause, but it changes your relationship to it. You are no longer at war with your own inner weather. You are learning to be its compassionate, steady witness. A mind that can observe its emotions without being enslaved by them is a mind of immense, unshakable strength. Our path now turns away from the noisy stream, into a part of the forest where the trees are stunted and grow far apart. The soil here seems poor. Nothing appears to thrive. This is the landscape cultivated by a habit that poisons the ground of our own perception. A gardener with 2 watering cans walks through a garden. One can is labeled beauty, the other weeds. Every time the gardener sees a flower, a moment of kindness, a small success, a glimpse of peace, she sprinkles it briefly from the beauty can and moves on. But every time she spots a weed, a worry, a criticism, a fear, she stops, douses it thoroughly from the weeds can, and studies it intently, wondering why it grew there and what other weeds it might attract. Which plants will flourish in that garden? This is the essence of a negative mindset. It is not the presence of negative thoughts. All minds produce those. It is the unconscious, habitual act of attending to them, watering them with our focus, our belief, and our emotional energy, while neglecting the flowers. This habit constructs a world. If you constantly attend to lack, the world feels scarce. If you constantly attend to threat, the world feels dangerous. Your mind, through the selective watering of attention, creates its own reality, and then declares that reality to be objectively true. This is a prison of your own making. The Buddhist practice of Yoniso Manasikara, or wise attention, is the antidote. It is the conscious choice of where to place the water of your awareness. It does not deny the weeds. It says, I see you, weed. But I choose to water the flower over here. An old scholar lived in a cottage near the temple. He was a master of history, but his personal history was a litany of perceived slights and failures. He could recount every criticism he'd ever received in vivid detail, but could barely remember a compliment. His inner narrative was a dense, dark thicket. I invited him to participate in a seemingly childish game. Each evening, he was to write down 3 stones and 3 flowers from his day. A stone was a small difficulty. A flower was a simple, good thing, the taste of his tea, the shape of a cloud, a task completed. He had to give each flower as much descriptive detail as each stone. For weeks, his stones were elaborate essays, his flowers were 2-word afterthoughts. But the discipline of the exercise forced him to search for flowers. Slowly, he began to notice them, the pattern of sunlight on his desk, the brief chat with the grocer, the comfort of his old chair. The flowers column grew longer, more detailed. He didn't become a blind optimist. But the balance of his inner garden began to shift. He was no longer a caretaker of a weed-choked lot, but a gardener tending a mixed and interesting plot. His mental atmosphere changed from one of perpetual gloom to one of nuanced, realistic weather. Your practice is to become the gardener of your attention. When you find yourself ruminating on a worry or a slight, gently interrupt the pattern. Consciously direct your focus to one neutral or pleasant sensory input. The feeling of your breath, the color of the sky, the weight of a cup in your hand. Then, actively look for one flower, one small thing that is not wrong. This is not naive positivity. It is ecological wisdom. You are choosing to nourish the mental states that lead to resilience and peace, and depriving the weeds of the nourishment they need to dominate. You are, quite literally, changing your mind. Let us continue. The forest path now descends into a damp, low-lying area. Here, the air is thick with a persistent, low sound, not the clear rush of the stream, but a monotonous, grumbling drone, like insects swarming over stagnant water. This is the sound of a habit that masquerades as engagement but is, in truth, a surrender of power. We all encounter circumstances we wish were different: the rain on a picnic day, the traffic jam, the rude comment, the delayed train. There is a natural, human moment of disappointment. But for some, this moment stretches into a practiced ritual, a verbal and mental rehearsal of grievance. This is complaining, specifically about things firmly outside our control. It is like standing in the rain and giving a detailed, passionate speech about the unfairness of precipitation. You are now wet and exhausted from the oration. This habit is a trap. It focuses our energy on the problem's existence, not on our response to it. It binds us to the very thing we dislike, creating a sticky identity around our discontent. In the quiet halls of Monk's Temple, we contemplate the deep teaching of anicca, impermanence. The rain will stop. The traffic will clear. This difficult situation, like all phenomena, is in flux. Complaining, however, freezes the moment. It says, this is how it is, and this is how it will always be, and it is unbearable. It is a refusal of the law of change. The alternative is not toxic positivity, but clear-eyed acceptance. Acceptance is the courageous, quiet statement, it is raining. From that solid ground of reality, not the swamp of complaint, we can then ask, given that it is raining, what can I do? This shifts us from passive victim to active participant in our own experience. I think of a man who ran a tea house near the temple. Every morning, like clockwork, he would lament the shortcomings of his suppliers, the fickleness of customers, the cost of fuel. His litany was as much a part of the morning routine as boiling the water. One day, a traveling monk listened patiently and then asked, for 1 week, could you trade each complaint for a single, silent observation? The next day, when the milk was delivered late, instead of launching into his usual speech, the man simply noted silently, the milk cart is late. He then turned and began polishing his cups. An hour later, when a customer was particularly fussy, he noted silently, this customer has many requests, and patiently fulfilled them. By not feeding the complaints with airtime, their weight began to lessen. He started to notice what was not wrong, the loyalty of his regulars, the warmth of his stove, the simple act of serving a good cup of tea. His energy, previously siphoned into the daily litany, began to flow back into his work. He didn't become a saint, he became a more present, and therefore more effective, tea master. The circumstances of his life changed little, but his experience of them transformed completely. Your practice is one of conscious conservation. Complaining is the expenditure of precious mental and emotional currency on a transaction that yields no return. When you feel the urge to voice a grievance about an uncontrollable external event, pause. Bite back the words. Feel the frustration in your body. Then, inwardly state the bare fact: the train is delayed. Now, turn your attention inward. What is one thing you can do with these unexpected minutes? Listen to music, read a page, observe the people around you, or simply rest. Redirect the energy of complaint into the energy of adaptation. You will find that most of the suffering in any bad situation comes not from the situation itself, but from our noisy, resistant commentary about it. Silence the commentary, and you often find the situation is simply a set of conditions to be met, not a personal affront to be decried. From the stagnant swampland of complaint, our path climbs to a rocky, exposed bluff. Here, the wind is fierce and constant. It is easy to lose your footing, and when you do, there is a powerful temptation to point to the wind and shout, "You made me fall." This is the territory of a habit that seeks to explain our stumbles by pointing anywhere but at our own feet. When we stumble on our path, our immediate, unexamined impulse is often to find an external cause. The rock was loose. The map was wrong. Someone else pushed me. This is the habit of blame. It is the mental act of depositing responsibility for our circumstances, our mood, our failures, our unhappiness, into an account held by someone or something else. My parents made me this way. My boss ruined my day. The government is responsible for my struggles. While there is undeniable truth to the influence of others, blame is a dead-end street. It is a story that ends with you as a helpless object, buffeted by the actions of others. It robs you of the most empowering truth, that between any external event and your experience of it, there is a space. In that space lies your freedom, the freedom to choose your response. The Buddha's teaching on karma is profoundly relevant here. Karma is not fate. It is the law of moral causation. It says that our volitional actions, our choices of thought, word, and deed, shape the trajectory of our experience. Blaming others is a refusal to look at our own karmic input. It is focusing only on the seeds others have sown in our field, while ignoring the seeds we are sowing ourselves, every day, with our attitudes and reactions. Taking responsibility is not about accepting guilt for everything that happens. It is about claiming authority over the one thing you truly own, your present moment relationship to what is happening. A student was struggling deeply with resentment toward a fellow student who seemed to receive more praise and easier assignments. He built a detailed case in his mind about the teacher's favoritism. He was poised to leave his studies, a victim of injustice. I asked him to undertake a simple, private experiment. For 1 month, he was to act as if he were 100% responsible for his own learning experience. Not for the teacher's behavior, but for his own engagement. He was to come to each session with one deeply prepared question. He was to offer help to his resented peer on a shared task. He was to find one thing to appreciate in each lesson, even if it was small. Reluctantly, he agreed. The first week was an act of sheer will. But as he focused on his own agency, his questions, his help, his appreciation, his attention shifted away from the other student. He began to engage more deeply with the material for its own sake. He discovered he enjoyed helping. The perceived favoritism didn't magically disappear, but it ceased to be the central drama of his education. By the month's end, he was learning more and suffering less. He had stopped outsourcing the authorship of his experience. Your power lies not in controlling the wind on the bluff, but in learning to adjust your stance, to find better footing, to become more stable. When you catch yourself in a blame narrative, pause. Ask yourself, leaving other people's actions aside, what is my part in this? How did I respond? What is one choice I can make right now to improve my situation? This is not self-punishment. It is self-empowerment. It moves you from the powerless position of the accuser to the powerful position of the creator. You stop being a character in someone else's story and start writing your own, one responsible, mindful choice at a time. Let us walk on. The forest has given way to a wide, open meadow under a vast sky. Here, the sun is warm, the grass is soft, and a gentle breeze carries the scent of earth and blossoms. It is a place of profound peace and connection. Yet, many of us hurry through such meadows, eyes fixed on a distant gate, missing the soft grass underfoot, the butterflies, the companionship of others walking nearby. This brings us to a habit of absence, a forgetting of what nourishes us most deeply. Human beings are, in our deepest essence, relational creatures. Our nervous systems are wired for connection, our minds cohere in dialogue, our hearts find their rhythm in resonance with other hearts. To neglect personal relationships is not merely a social faux pas, it is a form of self-starvation. It is like having a deep, clear well of fresh water in your yard, but being too busy to lower the bucket, choosing instead to wander in a state of constant, low-grade thirst. We prioritize tasks, achievements, digital distractions, and the illusion of independence, while the bonds that truly sustain us, with family, friends, community, grow brittle from inattention. In the philosophy that infuses Monk's Temple, this is understood through the principle of praditya samutpada, or interdependent origination. Nothing exists in isolation. You are not a separate, solid self. You are a dynamic node in a vast, shimmering web of life. Your well-being is interwoven with the well-being of your parents, your partner, your friend, even the stranger you smile at on the street. To neglect relationship is to deny this fundamental truth and to live under the exhausting illusion of separateness. It drains us because we are fighting our own nature. We are trying to be a single, sustained note, when we are meant to be part of a symphony. Time is the sacred currency of care. We often say, I don't have time, but what we are really saying is, this is not a priority. The Buddha's teachings constantly remind us of the preciousness and fragility of human life. Knowing that our time with loved ones is finite is not a morbid thought, it is the spark that ignites true presence. When you sit with someone you care for, and you give them the gift of your full, undivided attention, phone away, mind not racing to the next thing, you are performing the most profound spiritual practice. You are acknowledging the reality of the other, and in doing so, you anchor yourself more deeply in the reality of connection. I remember a father, a master carpenter, whose hands could shape wood into forms of stunning beauty. But his son saw only his back, bent over a workbench. The boy would try to show him a drawing, and the father would grunt, "Not now, I'm busy," his mind on a joint or a curve. The distance between them grew, filled with silence and missed signals. The father came to the temple bewildered by his son's coldness. I did not give him a speech. I suggested a simple trade. For every hour he spent at his bench, he would spend 10 minutes at his son's side, not teaching, not correcting, just being present. The only rule was he could not speak about woodwork. At first, it was agonizing silence. Then, the boy started to talk, about school, about a game, about nothing at all. The father learned to listen with his hands still. He heard not just the words, but the timbre of his son's voice, the light in his eyes. The relationship did not heal because of a grand gesture, but because the father stopped passing by the well. He lowered the bucket. He drank. And in that act of receiving the gift of his son's presence, he quenched a thirst he didn't even know he had. Your practice is to audit the currency of your time. Where is it flowing? Is it nourishing the connections that nourish you? Start small. Schedule connection as you would an important meeting, because it is. Send a brief, heartfelt message. Make a 5-minute phone call just to listen. Share a meal without screens. In these moments, practice deep listening. Listen not to formulate your reply, but to understand the universe contained within the other person. This attentive, generous presence is the water that keeps the relational garden alive. In giving it, you receive the strength that comes from knowing you are not alone on this journey. You are part of the meadow, part of the vast, interconnected whole. From the nourishing openness of the meadow, our path turns once more, leading us to the edge of a great, still lake at dusk. Its surface is a perfect mirror, holding the first stars of the evening. This lake teaches the final, and perhaps most subtle, habit, the habit of forgetting the mirror-like nature of your own mind in the face of life's reflections. Our minds possess a quality like this lake, clarity, stillness, and the capacity to reflect perfectly whatever appears before it. Pleasure, pain, success, failure, praise, blame. The habit is to become enchanted by, or terrified of, the reflections, and to forget the lake. We believe the stormy sky is the water, or the glittering sunset is the water. We attach our identity to the content of our experience. I am a failure, I am a success, I am hurt, I am brilliant. This is the root of all fragility. When the reflection is pleasing, we cling to it, afraid of the clouds that will inevitably come. When it is frightening, we thrash against it, disturbing the lake's natural stillness with our panic. The pinnacle of the Buddha's wisdom points directly to this. It points to the nature of mind itself, vast, aware, empty like space, yet capable of knowing all things. It is called by many names: Buddha nature, original mind, suchness. This is not a philosophical concept to be believed, but a direct experience to be realized. It is the lake knowing itself as water, not as the passing sky. All the practices we have discussed, mindfulness, acceptance, right intention, loving kindness, are not ends in themselves. They are the gentle process of calming the water so you can see through the reflections to your own true, unwavering nature. There is a final, simple story. An old monk was dying. His students gathered around, distraught. One asked, "Master, where will you go?" The old man smiled weakly. He pointed to the metal water basin beside his bed. "See the moon reflected in the water?" The students nodded. "When the basin breaks," he whispered, "where does the moon go?" He closed his eyes. The students puzzled over this for years. The moon was always in the sky. The reflection was dependent on the basin, the water, the angle. The master's life, his personality, his teachings, these were the reflection. The clear, boundless awareness that knew his life, that was the moon in the vast sky. He wasn't going anywhere, because what he truly was had never been contained in the basin to begin with. Your journey toward unshakable mental strength is, in the end, this, a gradual remembering that you are the lake, not the weather. You are the awareness, not the thoughts. You are the vast sky, not the passing clouds of circumstance. The habits we have explored are the ways we forget this, identifying instead with the temporary, the conditional, the reflected. The practices are the ways we remember. So when you are lost in a negative thought, feel the pain of blame, or ache with loneliness, pause. Ask yourself, who is aware of this? Who knows this feeling? Do not answer with a thought. Simply feel back into the awareness itself. That silent, knowing presence, that is you. It cannot be weakened by any habit, any loss, any criticism. It is the source of all true strength. It has been there all along, like the sky behind the clouds, like the lake beneath the reflections. Your work is simply to rest in that, more and more, until even in the midst of life's greatest storms, you know yourself as the unwavering, peaceful depth that holds it all. We have walked a long way together through this inner landscape. We have paused in clearings of habit, sat by streams of emotion, and looked out from bluffs of perception. We have named 10 patterns that, like gentle but persistent winds, can erode the cliffs of our mental resilience. But to name them is not to condemn ourselves. It is an act of love, like a gardener identifying which plants are choking the sunlight from the others. Now, as our path begins to circle back toward where we started, let us not simply review a list, but feel the weaving together of these threads into a single, stronger fabric. See how these habits are not isolated islands, but a connected archipelago. The negative mindset, watering the weeds, provides the fertile soil for complaining, the litany of wrong. When we complain about the uncontrollable, we feel powerless, which tempts us into blaming others, outsourcing agency. Feeling like a victim, we may retreat into fantasizing, building castles on clouds, to escape, which further disconnects us from the raw material of the present. Disconnected, we neglect our relationships, passing by the well, which leaves us lonely and emotionally raw, making us more prone to being ruled by our emotions, becoming the storm. In the storm, we desperately try to control everything, mistaking our sphere, which is exhausting, so we escape into dwelling on a past where we imagine we had control, living in the museum. Haunted by the past, we become hypersensitive to how we are perceived, worrying about others' opinions, mistaking the reflection for the sky, which pressures us to silence our true voice, leading us back to not expressing ourselves, letting the bell go silent. It is a cycle, a wheel of suffering. The wisdom we have drawn from, the ancient map from the Buddhist teachings, offers not a fight against this wheel, but a graceful step off of it. Every antidote we've discussed is, at its heart, a homecoming to the present moment, and a return to a compassionate relationship with ourselves. Mindfulness is the foundational step off. It is the simple, revolutionary act of noticing you are on the wheel. It is the pause between the trigger and the reaction, the space where choice becomes possible. Whether it's noticing a negative thought, the urge to complain, or the heat of anger, mindfulness is the lantern that illuminates the habit in the very moment it arises. Acceptance is the ground you land on when you step off. It is the courageous, gentle yes to what is actually happening right now. It is saying, "It is raining," instead of, "It shouldn't be raining." This acceptance is not defeat. It is the end of a futile war with reality, which frees all your energy for a skillful response. Compassion, particularly self-compassion, metta, is the warmth you wrap around yourself when you see the habit, when you feel the pain of it. It is the antidote to the harshness of negativity and blame. It is the voice that says, "It's understandable that I feel this way," before gently guiding you toward a wiser choice. Discernment is the wisdom that learns to distinguish between your sphere of influence and your sphere of concern. It is the practical tool that dismantles the habits of control and complaint. It asks, "What can I actually do?" and focuses your life force there. Authentic expression is the life force flowing freely once again. It is the bell ringing cleanly after the moss is cleared. It is the act of honoring your inner truth, which builds self-respect and integrity, making you less vulnerable to the opinions of others. Responsibility is claiming your power as the author of your response. It is taking the steering wheel of your inner world. It transforms you from a passive character into the active protagonist of your own story. Investment in connection is the recognition that you are part of a whole. It is the act of drawing strength from and offering strength to the web of life. It is the deep knowing that you do not have to be strong alone. And underlying all of these is the recognition of your true nature, as the lake, not the storm, as the awareness, not the thought. This is not a philosophy to believe, but a reality to glimpse, again and again, in moments of pause, in the space between breaths, in the stillness after a laugh. Each time you glimpse it, the habits lose a little more of their solidity. They become like old tunes you can hear without having to dance to them. This is not a linear journey of perfect progress. It is a spiral. You will recognize a habit, practice the antidote, and feel a sense of space and peace. And then, perhaps an hour later, or the next day, you will find yourself fully engrossed in the old pattern again. This is not failure. This is the path. The practice is in the returning. The moment you notice you have been lost in complaint for 10 minutes, that moment of noticing is the victory. That is mindfulness being reborn. Gently, without self-blame, guide yourself back. This is the heart of the training, endless, compassionate return. Think of it as learning a new language, the language of your own awakened mind. At first, you will fumble with the words of mindfulness and acceptance. You will have thick accents of old habit. But with gentle, persistent practice, the new language becomes more fluent. The moments of peace become longer. The recovery from disturbance becomes quicker. You are not building a new self, you are remembering the strong, clear, compassionate presence that was always there, beneath the noise of conditioning. So, carry no heavy list of shoulds from our walk. Carry instead a single question, a gentle touchstone for any moment: am I meeting this experience with awareness and kindness? That is the entire teaching. When you are stuck in traffic, can I meet this frustration with awareness and kindness? When you receive criticism, can I meet this sting with awareness and kindness? When you feel lonely, can I meet this ache with awareness and kindness? This question is the compass that will always point you back to the path of strength, no matter how far into the forest of habit you may have wandered. And so, dear friend, we have come to the end of our walk for now. The forest path opens once more onto the quiet grounds of Monk's Temple. The same mist hangs over the mountains, the same bell rests in its tower, the same garden grows, but perhaps you hear, see, and feel it all a little differently. That is the hope. We have sat with 10 shadows that can cross the bright sun of the mind. The silence of the unrung bell. The exhausting mirror gaze for approval. The futile struggle to command the rain. The dusty museum of yesterday. The castle built on insubstantial cloud. The storm we mistake for our own name. The careful watering of thorn and weed. The litany sung to the unhearing sky. The pointed finger that leaves us empty-handed. And the lonely walk past the deep, quenching well. Seeing these patterns clearly is the first and greatest step. You cannot change what you do not see. In the gentle light of our shared attention, these habits lose their power to hide in the dim corners of your life. They are simply patterns, not truths. And as the timeless wisdom flowing through this temple reminds us, where there is clear seeing, there is the possibility of release. This is not a path of becoming perfect. It is a path of becoming present. It is not about eradicating every negative thought or never feeling angry again. It is about changing your relationship to all the movements of your mind and heart. It is about no longer being a prisoner to the old, automatic tunes, but becoming the spacious concert hall in which they play, aware, intact, and at peace. The strength we speak of is not the brittle strength of a wall, defiant against the elements. It is the resilient strength of the bamboo, which bends deeply in the storm but does not break, because it is hollow, flexible, and rooted. Your mental strength is this. The hollow, open space of awareness that can hold any experience without shattering. The flexibility of a heart that can meet anger with compassion, loss with grief, and joy with gratitude, without clinging. The rootedness in a knowing that you are part of something vast and interconnected. Take one thing from our time together. Just one. Perhaps it is the intention to pause for 3 breaths before reacting in anger. Perhaps it is the commitment to notice one beautiful thing each day. Perhaps it is the courage to speak one small, true sentence you have been holding back. Perhaps it is simply the resolve to sit for 5 minutes in the morning and feel the breath, without changing it. One simple thread, pulled with consistency, can begin to unravel the entire tangled knot. Remember, you are not alone on this path. Every being who has ever sought peace has walked it. The Buddhist teachings are not a relic, but a living, breathing map left by a fellow traveler who wanted you to know the way home. Home to the peace that is already within you. Home to the strength that does not need to be manufactured, only uncovered. Thank you for your presence, for your listening, for the courage it takes to look within with such honesty. This is the highest form of respect you can offer to your own life. As you leave this auditory temple and return to the vivid, demanding world of your daily life, carry this quiet with you. Let it be a soft background hum beneath the noise. You are always welcome to return here, to sit, to breathe, and to remember. May the clarity of your mind be as a still forest pool. May the compassion in your heart be as wide as the sky. May you move through the world with the resilient strength of bamboo, and may you find peace, not as a distant destination, but in the very next breath you take. Go in peace. Walk gently,